Let's start from the very beginning. The first question you should be asking yourself is why your story needs to be immersive. And you should try to answer this question not from a creator's point of view, but from your audience's standpoint. Why will be VR the best medium to deliver your story? And before we start, I'd like to share with you a quote from Jay Persis and Jorge Lopez that I think that illustrates very well why this is so important. So let's look at the unique characteristics of VR. We have virtual world, immersion and sensory feedback, and interactivity. So let's analyze this one to see a few reasons why we might want to do an immersive story. In the first place, virtual world. Essentially, when we are building this imaginary new world, we don't need to mimic the rules that apply to the real one. For example, in Argentina, we produced a piece that completely messed up the relationship with time and space. So, in that imaginary world, the future was in front of you, the past in your back, and the present next to you. Audience found it quite easy to intuitively understand how the rules between time and space worked in that imaginary world. And that was the whole reason why we wanted to do a piece in VR, to see how could we navigate in a world where the rules had changed. Secondly, we have immersion and sensory feedback, which means that in this virtual world, we are completely surrounded by it. Visually, because the VR headset covers our whole field of vision. Aurally, because sound is completely surrounding us. And thanks to spatial sound, we can even position it geographically according to the different actions that are taking place around us. For example, in the piece Clouds Over Sidra, produced in 2015 by Chris Milk and Gabo Aurora, one reason why they might wanted to produce that piece in VR was because they wanted the audience to feel how uncomfortable it was to be stuck in a Syrian refugee camp and how unfair it was. They really wanted you to have this feeling. Also, some experiences, especially if we're talking about location-based entertainment, may be enhanced by other elements such as real actors that might be touching you, or smells, or maybe some other devices that can help you feel that what you're living is even more real. For example, there is this piece, Airflow by Mindride, where you experience like you are flying. And thanks to the strings that pull you from the ceiling, you have a much more real impression that you're actually flying. Thirdly, interactivity. By default, any VR piece is interactive, simply because your audience is placed in the middle of that experience and is able to look whatever they want to. Therefore, that's a single level of interaction. But this interaction can be enhanced if the audience is also allowed to grab some objects and even talk to the characters and so on. For example, there is this piece, Queer Skins, where you're sitting on the back of the car and you're listening to the characters and you have the feeling of being on that car. But also, you have a box next to you and you can be grabbing objects to understand some missing parts of information. And that's the reason why they wanted to add interactivity. So you could actually fill in the gaps of the information that was missing from the conversation. In conclusion, all of these concepts could be bundled together into one single word, presence, which is achieved when the audience remembers that experience as something that they lived, not something that they saw. So you should start thinking why presence is a key element to your story so your audience can enjoy it to the fullest. PR also has its challenges because as creators, we lose control over our audience. So, for example, you could be creating like a lot of really interesting actions and elaborate dialogues on that part of the wall. But actually, I just moving houses and I'm looking for shelves, and there I see a very nice shelf, and I'm just interested in looking at it instead of looking into all the effort you've put in that scene there. But this can also be an opportunity and can be used as a reason of why to create an immersive story. For example, in Barcelona, we produced this piece that simulated that the government had just passed a new law where couples, in order to get married, they should ask the government for permission. Then the government will allow 12 strangers into your private life. And the audience, that 12 people, will make a decision on whether you could marry or not. This was a piece where we mixed the VR with live actors. So here you can see SP. She was the government agent that was explaining to the audience that situation. Then the audience will put the headset on and they will see this brief situation of that couple where he was proposing his girlfriend. What some people saw and some people didn't say is that they were not alone in that room. So we use that extra information to our advantage in order to create a much more rich experience. So the main takeover for this chapter will be to understand that VR is a completely new medium, not an evolution of an existing format. Therefore, we need to start thinking natively and spot that stories that are unique to VR. So, to finish this chapter, I'd like to invite you to search for immersive experience. Watch them and try to analyze from a narrative point of view, not focusing on the quality of the visuals, but from the narrative, try to analyze whether you think that VR was the best medium to deliver that story, or if you think that in any particular case, any other format might have been better. Also, for the ones that you enjoy, I like to try to write down why do you think that VR made them stand out? Which value did it bring into the experience? Also, as I said at the very beginning, remember that VR is an emerging medium and we can all contribute to it with our thoughts and our insights and so on. So please, I will really like to invite you in this chapter and all the following ones to share the work and the findings that you do with your colleagues and with the community because it's going to be really, really valuable. Thank you so much.